Hello and welcome to Africa Today. I am Esther Mokwariola. Call him the disruptive commander-in-chief or the accidental leader of the free world, if you like. But Africa and the rest of the globe has had more than a handful to deal with since Donald Trump became the 45th president of the United States. For as old as anyone can remember, the region has often found itself on the spotlight, subject to dark narratives and degrading stereotypes. Not until Trump recently took it a notch higher, literally referring to Africa as a conglomerate of shithole countries. And so we ask, what are your thoughts on the vulgar comments credited to Donald Trump on immigrants from third world countries, especially from Africa? You can join the conversation and share your thoughts with us on Twitter at TVC News NG. We take a report now, and Africa Today will be right back. Welcome on board.
U.S. President Donald Trump has been under fire at home and abroad after some reports said he referred to Haiti and African nations in a disparaging manner during a meeting on an immigration deal with a group of bipartisan lawmakers at the White House. The comment reportedly came as Republican and Democratic senators were briefing the president on changes to the U.S. visa lottery system and considerations about the immigration from Africa.
I think it is not unnatural of American President Donald Trump. We are used to what I will call infantile tantrums from the leader of the #1 nation in the world.
Because he came across, so much wealth, he thought that the world is under his feet and he can do anything, say anything and get away with it.
What Donald Trump said is offensive because at the end of the day, we're all human beings created in the property of God. So we are all part of one.
Durbin, speaking to reporters, said he had been explaining a bipartisan group of senators' immigration plan on Thursday and how it impacted immigrants from various countries, including those in Africa.
In the course of his comments, said things which were hate-filled, vile, and racist. I use those words advisedly. I understand how powerful they are. But I cannot believe that in the history of the White House, in that Oval Office, any president has ever spoken the words that I personally heard our president speak yesterday. You've seen the comments in the press. I have not read one of them that's inaccurate. To no surprise, the president started tweeting this morning denying that he used those words. It is not true.
United Nations Human Rights Office also rejected as racist and inciting xenophobia the reported remarks by U.S. President Donald Trump. UN Human Rights spokesman Rupert Colville said they were shocking and shameful, qualifying them as racist.
This isn't just a story about vulgar language. It's about opening the door to humanity's worst side. It's about validating and encouraging racism and xenophobia that will potentially disrupt and even destroy the lives of many people. And that's perhaps the single most damaging and dangerous consequence of this type of comment by a major political figure.
In November, the Trump administration decided to end the status for immigrants from Haiti and Nicaragua.
Welcome back. Mixed reactions continue to trail recent comments of United States President when he singled out Haiti, El Salvador and African nations as shithole countries during a meeting on immigration in his Oval Office. The African Union, United Nations and other world leaders around the continent were displeased about the statement, calling it despicable and unacceptable, even as Donald Trump continues to deny any wrongdoing. Well, joining me in the studio on Africa Today, I have Dubi Imevore, solicitor and a cultural renaissance advocate. And on Skype, I have Abayomi Azikiwe, editor, Pan-African Wires, Detroit, United States of America. Good to have you gentlemen on the program.
Thank you.
All right, let me begin with you, Dubi.
Yes.
The statement, credited to the United States president came as a shock to many, especially as he called African countries and Haiti, immigrants from there, as from shithole countries. But let me ask you this: does it come to you as a surprise
Not at
from a person like Donald Trump?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, personally, with Donald Trump's track record since he became president, I don't think we should countenance despicable statements that he makes, really and truly.
Why?
Well, because, you know, if we subject such statements to the test of veracity, it cannot hold. As a matter of fact, I'm not very, very concerned with Donald Trump making the statement. I'm more concerned with the reaction of some people validating the statement.
And what are your concerns?
Well, my concerns is that, you know, when we validate statements, when our people validate statements like that, it means they are still adorning the inferiority complex which the whole colonial setup has imposed on us. And that means we will not have the will to actually confront our social challenges. So that's my fear.
Abayomi, I think you just heard Adubi's own point of view. What would you have to say to that?
I believe that it should not be surprising that Trump would make such a statement. He ran his campaign in 2016, appealing to many whites in the United States, utilizing stereotypes, racist phraseology. I referred to people from Mexico as being criminals and rapists and drug dealers. Now, mind you, Mexico is a country where the majority of its territory was taken by the United States in a war of conquest during the middle of the 19th century. States like California, New Mexico, Arizona, and Texas were a part of the Republic of Mexico prior to the 1850s. But this, of course, is really a reflection of the inherent bias of U.S. immigration policy since the beginning. It wasn't until 1965, passage of the Immigration and Nationality Act eliminated quotas in regard to immigration of people from Africa and Asia. And this bill that was passed in 1965 coincided with the civil rights movement in the United States. The civil rights bills that were passed in 1964, 1965, that came out of the movement that was led by the African American people. So this is an attack on not only people who were born on the continent of Africa, but all people of African descent worldwide. He also attacked Haiti, which is a country that was, in essence, born in the enslavement of African people by France. And of course, as a result of that, the Haitians organized a revolution in the 1790s that transformed the country from a slave state to the first time ever done.
All right.
So clearly,
okay.
Trump, he's misleading the world in regard to immigration in the United States.
All right, let's look at the implications of this statement now. What do you think can be the possible scenario, looking at it holistically? Because, you know, America has a relationship with Africa, and of course it has an interest in Africa in terms of the economic, you know, benefits it stands to gain. But far and large, what do you think will be the implication of this comment coming from the #1 president of the world?
First of all, I think the American political class, I don't think they endorsed the statement. So as a result of that, it might not have too serious an implication. Now, again, like an analysis that I was going through today, the meaning of shithole means that a hole that emits only shit. I live in Africa.
But that's categorically what it means.
Yeah, I live in Nigeria.
All right.
I'm certainly not living in a shithole.
Yeah.
And you know, so again, even the British Parliament in a debate outrightly condemned. In fact, they actually were requesting for the cancellation of Trump's state visit. You know, so I don't see any implication per se. You know, it's just, for me, what it concerns me really is how we as Africans will have to deal with all this onslaught.
So you are trying to say now that what he said isn't true regarding to Africans as from shithole countries. Am I correct?
It cannot be true.
It can be true.
It cannot
But
be
some
true.
Nigerians will say, or some Africans, even in some African countries, even though they might not want to accept the narrative, but what do you say about things in Africa where some would say, you know, systems don't work?
Yeah.
People find it very difficult to survive.
Yeah.
A lot of immigrants are from Africa, go into Europe in search
Yeah.
of better life.
Yeah.
So wasn't that enough to qualify, even though it might not come out, you know, the real sense of the word, because not everyone wants to accept what it means, but isn't that what it is?
No.
So what is it?
Certainly not. We have what I will call developmental social challenges. And as a matter of fact, let me make a point here, because we tend to overlook that point. Part of the underdevelopment of Africa, what do you call the imperialist, Western imperialists are actually responsible for it. Read Walter Rodney's book on how Europe underdeveloped Africa.
Should we continue to hold on to that they're responsible for our underdevelopment, knowing that we've moved
You
on
see,
ahead
it's
of
not
that?
about holding on to it. It's about identifying it and confronting it. Validating the statement that Trump makes cannot make us see the will to validate these things. And that is why I personally advocate for cultural renaissance. It's until we know our history, until we know who we really are, we can't confront these Western imperialists. They undermine us every day through their what they call multinational conglomerates. We should know this. Anytime a good leader, even Fela sang about it in US underground system, anytime a good leader comes up in Africa, through their covert means, they take away these leaders. We know what they did to Lumumba. They were complicit in the killing of, what's his name, Sankara. We know these things. So don't let them undermine us on one hand and come round to begin to call us shithole. We need our own innate energy to fight these people, not through Christianity and Islam.
All right, let's hold your thought for now. We need to go on a very quick break. You're watching Africa Today, and we've been looking at the recent vulgar comments from the United States president against immigrants from African countries and Haiti. Stay with us. We have more discussions in a bit. More than a year after he took office, President Trump is yet to announce an African policy or fill up an important United States diplomatic positions in the interest of the African continent. Well, last year, Trump reportedly said thousands of Haitians who were given visas into the United States all have HIV and AIDS, and that Nigerian migrants who had just come into the country wouldn't want to go back to their village huts in Africa. Well, Dave, Abayami Azikiwe, yes, quite a disturbing comment, you know, I would say, for Africans, especially for migrants who are in the United States. But you are in the United States now. How are you taking this there?
People are outraged by this. But as I said before, it's not surprising. Trump appeals to racism among the whites, and for a very basic reason. The demographic character of the United States is changing rapidly. Within the next 2 to 3 decades, the majority of people inside the United States, whether we're talking about people of African descent, Middle Eastern descent, Latin American descent, Asian descent, and Native Americans combined, will represent a majority of the population in this country. And this is the fear of the white dominant ruling class inside the United States, that they will become a minority within the United States. So this is where this is coming from in regard to rationalizing racism on an institutionalized level. And this is very, very important for people around the world to understand. People like Trump want the United States to remain, quote, a white man's country, unquote, when in fact, the only reason it is a white man's country is because of the forced removal and extermination of the indigenous people and the enslavement of our ancestors in North America for 2.5 centuries.
But is there a possibility, Abayomi, sorry for butting in here, is there a possibility that the whites will ever be in the minority, as you claim, knowing that, well, they have ruled the land for a long time now?
Yes, just look at the statistical trends in regard to population growth in the United States. The majority of children that are being born right now in the United States are non-white. If you look at the public school systems around the country, in the major cities, even now in the suburban areas, the majorities are Black, brown, Asian, Middle Eastern. So this is the root cause of this type of rationalization of a continuation of institutionalized racism in the United States. But people are not going to tolerate being put back into slavery, being put back into a second-class citizenship status. It's not going to happen. And the reason why it's not going to happen is because many people have been organizing for many years to guarantee their right to full equality, to self-determination. And people have sacrificed tremendously in this regard. Just 2 days ago, we commemorated the 89th birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was assassinated 50 years ago in an attempt to make the United States an equal and just society. But the struggle did not stop with his assassination. It continues today, some half-century later.
Now, talking about a just society, which you just mentioned there, do you think that the Black Americans in the United States there enjoy as much as it is, as they should be as an American citizen, knowing that, well, for a large percentage of those in America, the blacks is not really seen as, you know, a total full American, but they still have some traces of racism in America. So what is the potential of having a just society in a country where the whites have dominated for a very long period of time?
To the extent that we have democracy in the United States, to the extent that we have human rights and civil rights in the United States, it is a direct manifestation of the struggles of the African American people and other oppressed people. It is the leadership of the African American people that eliminated legalized segregation in the United States. So in that regard, African Americans have contributed immensely to creating whatever semblance of democracy that exists right now. And this struggle is not going to end. And now, since we have many immigrants and their children from Africa, from the Caribbean, from Latin America, from the Middle East, and so forth, they too are joining this struggle. It's a constant struggle, it's a protracted struggle, but at the end of the day, there's no way that the racists are going to prevail in the United States. This is why they're attempting to reverse history. Trump is a manifestation of this, but it does not represent their strengths. It really is an indication of the desperation and weakness of the racists in this country to maintain the status quo.
All right, let me quickly come to you now, Dubi. From what Abayomi believes now, racism will not prevail in the United States, and of course, it is a constant struggle, no doubt, in that region, in that country. But how can Africa, as a nation now, begin to rewrite the script against every form of stereotype and prejudice now, in an attempt to, well, reclaim her lost glory, as it were?
I mean, I'm going to repeat this for every time I have to speak on our emancipation, my starting point is going back to knowing who we are. That is, we need what I call a renaissance of culture. That's my mantra. Until we begin to know ourselves, the restoration of self-pride, which will make it possible for us to lift ourselves from the doldrums, will not happen.
So how do we begin to know ourselves? Is it by going back to the classrooms, or is it about getting to understand history once again?
Yes, but by getting back to understand history, by getting to know authentic history. You went to school probably maybe about the same time that I went to school. You know the history of Mungo Park. You know the history of Mary Slessor and William Wilberforce. But we don't know the history of authentic Africans. We don't know the history of how the Moors, right, actually developed Europe.
The Moors are Africans too.
Yeah, the Moors, the Mayans. We were reading recently that some is it underground tunnel or something was discovered in Mexico built by the Mayans, right? Now, we don't know anything. We don't even know that we from West Africa taught the world binary coding that is behind computing today. We don't know that. So the whole colonial education, the imperialists deliberately veiled that aspect from us when we attend their schools. And it's those that have been taken away from what we are that rule us, right? So they rule us with borrowed mentality. As Fela said, they borrowed the I. The king of our country hired the I that he's using, not his own original I. So we need to begin to talk about who we really are in schools, seminars, symposium, and teach these things to our children.
And so if you're talking about teaching culture and everything, does it also apply, going back to a cultural practice that was done in years back? Because right now, we've all adopted modernization, and modernization, well, is termed civilization.
Excuse me, please. What do you mean by civilization? Civilization started with us. So what do you mean by civilization? The truth of the matter is that any culture is dynamic, right? And when I say culture is dynamic, it doesn't mean that that culture has to superimpose another culture and obliterate its own features, which is really what we do. I mean, look at our system. Governance is all about, if it was Westminster before, it's now US presidential system. We import systems, hook, line, and impose it on a system, and they clash and create confusion.
But don't you think that would be a very tall order?
It is not a tall order. They said a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. So why do we always think it's a tall order? It's about programming our minds. They programmed our minds. It wasn't a tall order for them. Of course, they didn't do it overnight. So why can't we start reprogramming? Why can't we start the process of decolonization? That's my own point.
Okay. All right, let me quickly wrap up the show with you now. Bayami, what lessons do you think Africa now can learn from this development?
Education is very important. The origin of humanity is in Africa. The first civilizations in the world were founded along the Nile Valley and other parts of Africa. They predate by centuries the civilizations of Europe. Africa today is underdeveloped as a result of centuries of enslavement and colonization. And even today, we're subjected to neocolonialism, where the price of oil, natural gas, diamonds, gold is still determined by the Western imperialist states.
Yes.
So this is our challenge going into the second, third, fourth decades of this century, is to unite, to recognize our heritage and our destiny. It is inevitable that the imperialist system will collapse, and it's our duty as African people to rebuild a world system that is far more humane and far more just than what it exists today.
All right.
The Donald Trumps of the world are clearly not the future of humanity.
All right, let's thank you very much, and we hope the narratives of Africa will change, and very time at that. Thank you very much, Abayami Azikiwe, for your thoughts with us on Africa Today as well. Do be Imebore. We would like to thank you very much as well for your contributions on the program. At least at the risk of either sounding racist or xenophobic, Trump's vulgar comments about migrants from Africa largely looks at a reflection of his personal opinion, where alternative fact seem to have taken the place of undeniable hope. Well, there is no better time than now for Africa to stop playing catch-up and rise up to the challenges, where it takes good governance and strong institutions to ensure sustainable development for all. And that is our package for today. But don't forget to join the conversation as usual on Twitter at TVC News NG, and follow me for updates around Africa at Esther TVC News. Until the next one, I am Esther Mokwariola, and always remember, change starts with you.
Somebody born by virgin. Nobody is born by virgin. It's impossible.
So what do you think? You just all came down. Sorry. Yeah, director. Hello and welcome. Here is the World Focus on TVC. We start with the Koreas. North and South Korea have agreed to march together under a single unified Korean flag at next month's